right. So now you've watched Ananse in the Pot of Beans.
Did you like the story? It's kind of a silly one.
It was kind of silly.
It's honestly, to be quite honest, it's not my favorite
No,
Ananse story.
no,
There
it's
are
not.
better Ananse stories
Mhm.
than that one.
But
Oh,
now,
look, I
what?
saw a snowflake.
Oh,
there.
did you?
I did.
We'll get distracted by watching the snow.
See my snowflake shirt?
Yes, I know. I like it. I should have worn my snowflake shirt. I wore
almost
white
wore
for
that,
snow.
yeah. Sorry, guys. Back to reading.
Yeah,
but you know
squirrel.
what? If you were here, we'd have been talking about it too.
That's right. That's right. All right. So you've watched the Pot of Beans. So now let's think about the lessons before we actually determine one lesson. Let's look at, because there are several we could learn.
So here are some choices, Miss Milam.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at these choices and see if we could have learned it from that story.
So down here, and you're going to have a slide just like this about a story you're going to read. So kind of listen to how we're thinking it through, and you'll do the same thing with your story. You're looking for the lesson that does not go with the story. 3 of these could work. Because, you know, when we've been in class and we've talked about folktales, we've had kids come up with different lessons that all work.
Absolutely.
So there's not just one correct one. All right.
So think before you act. Could Ananse have learned something, about thinking before he acts?
Did he do something where he didn't think before he acted? Oh, remember the pot of beans?
He put it on his head.
He just jerked it real quick, and he didn't stop and think about that.
And he might should have thought before he ate all the beans too.
Yeah.
He wasn't very smart.
So that does go with the story.
And I'm looking for the one that does not. So let's look at the next one.
Tell the truth and admit it when you make a mistake.
Layla, I had to do that with you the other day, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
About my chocolate.
Uh-oh. Yep.
Okay. Tell the truth. Did Ananse not tell the truth?
Well, remember, he wasn't truthful about eating the beans. He was trying to hide it. He was really, and then he realized he made a mistake and ate too many, and he was, again, not truthful.
So he should have learned to tell the truth. So that one doesn't work. I'm looking for the one that's not.
You must work for what you want.
Well, he wanted the beans and he got them. So I don't think but he didn't have to work. He didn't not work.
Because I think Grandma was going to share the beans when she got home when they were done, but he wasn't patient and didn't want to wait for them.
It wasn't like, what was the one that we read just the other day, Miss Milam, where, shoot, I completely went blank. I got a squirrel there for a second. Hang on. The ant and the grasshopper. That's the fable I was thinking of, where the grasshopper was lazy and the ant was working. That's not this story. He didn't get in trouble.
And there's nothing bad that happened with him working or not working. It just...
So I think that one is going to be... I'm going to drag it down here because I think... Well, there it comes. I think that's it. Now, we got to check this last one, but that's what I'm thinking, and I want to hold on to that.
Listen to those who are wiser than you.
Is there somebody in the story that Ananse should have listened to?
Well, at the beginning, Grandma says, Ananse, leave the beans alone.
Hey, I'm making a text-to-text connection. Remember when we read Stregonona and the pasta pot, and she says, leave the pasta pot alone?
Yes.
Same thing. Listen. Big Anthony could have learned to have listened. He could have learned the same lesson as Ananse.
Absolutely.
And you know what? These lessons, that's one thing about folktales, is they're timeless.
Yes.
People for hundreds of thousands of years have needed to learn those lessons, and we still need them today.
You know, Miss Taylor and I can learn to listen to those who are wiser than us. They're, you know, if I want to, you wanted to learn how to make a blanket. You had to learn. I mean, that wasn't like for advice necessarily, but it was. It was instructions on how to make the blanket. If you'd have tried doing it all by yourself, you probably had a big knot of yarn.
Yes.
But you had to listen to somebody who was wiser about that than you and learn from that. We all can learn that lesson.
If I wanted to bake something when my mama was alive, I would call her and say, Mama, how did you make this? Because she was wiser in that area than
We're
me.
trying to teach our kids to listen to those. We're still working on that, So
that comes with age. And they're not there yet.
No. So this is the one that does not match. So these 3 we could use in our...
We could justify them to connect.
All right. Our character status. This, guys, you all know we like to share updates about life, our families, our friends, whatever, on social media. People share on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, Snapchat. They're a lot more than that than I know of, but
TikTok.
yeah, and I think think there's a new one. Anyway, I don't know. My mom's getting old. I'm out of the loop. I have to get my kids to teach
We use
me
the
what's.
old woman Facebook. We use the old woman.
I know my kids tell me that all the time too. So character status. We're going to pretend that we're going to make a Facebook or a social media post about what just happened in this story. So a lot of times you'll say, on your social media posts, I'm feeling so proud today.
Feeling proud, whatever. Sometimes they even ask you, like, how are you feeling?
How are you today? Or whatever.
Yeah.
So how do you think Anansi was feeling in this story or toward the end of this story?
Foolish.
And I was thinking foolish. I was thinking embarrassed. He's foolish. We'll just stop
Miss
with
Milam,
that.
that ish is a suffix that means like a. So like a fool. He felt like a fool.
He did. So today he learned. What lesson do you think he learned? We could pick any of those that we had on the last slide or rephrase and put in our own words.
Let's see.
He learned.
I'm going to say to listen to those who are wiser, because if he had just listened to Grandma, he wouldn't have had to admit it, that he made a mistake. He wouldn't have ever lied. And he wouldn't have necessarily had to think before he put beans on his head, because he wouldn't have done it.
Listen to those who are wiser than you. So now we have to explain what happened for him to learn that lesson. We can't just, to say he learned the lesson. We got to say, how did he learn that lesson?
Well, I think we should say that Grandma was cooking beans and told Anansi.
A delay on
It
that.
does. There's a terrible delay today.
He was cooking beans and told Anansi to leave them alone.
While Grandma was gone?
Notice I'm capitalizing Grandma because that's being used as her name.
If I'd have said when his grandma was
wouldn't
gone,
be,
wouldn't have.
Yeah. So while Grandma was gone, Anansi ate a lot of the beans. He tried to
hide what he had done and ended up dumping a pot of beans on his head. You don't have to tell every little detail.
And I would say he was so embarrassed he went and hid in the woods or in the grass, and they said that's why spiders live in the grass today.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those.
Mm-hmm.
Leave it at that.
We could say he was embarrassed and went to live in the grass or hide in the grass, whatever.
So this here is describing how he learned that lesson.
It's like a summary, but it's a little bit different because we're connecting it directly to the lesson. Mm-hmm. Now the hashtag.
The last part down here, yes, this hashtag.
It's a social media fun kind of thing, Hashtag lesson learned.
Hashtag
listen to Grandma.
I like that one. Listen to Grandma.
And notice in a social media post,
or in that hashtag, you don't put spaces. Yeah. You run it all together. You could have been
hashtag something about beans. I was trying to do
hot beans. Hashtag. You said lesson learned.
Mm-hmm. Put a 2 or 3
just for fun.
Hashtags in there for fun.
Okay. So you're going to do a character. Well, let me just go over here. You're going to read a story called Anansi Goes Fishing.
And I like this one a lot better than the bean story.
So on your Google slide, the next slide is the text. Read it carefully. You may need to read. In fact, I encourage you to read it more than once. If there is somebody around, maybe read it with them and talk to them about it, because it's simple, but yet there's some little nuances in there you need to make sure you're understanding. So maybe read it with somebody near you.
And again, if you're confused by it, here would be a good time to drop in our open Zoom from 11
I don't
to
understand
1.
this story.
And we'll talk about the story a little bit, okay?
Then you're going to do like we did. Find the lesson that does not go with the story. 3 of these match the story. 1 does not. Then you're going to do your character status for how Anansi is feeling in there. And maybe we can say today he learned. What did he learn? If you're confused, go back and watch what we just did on ours.
And again, if you want to come to the Zoom, do something.
Mm-hmm.
Have something put in there, and then we'll look at it, give you some feedback, and help you make it better.
Then there are just 4 questions to answer about the story. The way you answer them, guys, is drag the box up and cover whichever word matches. Whoops. Bring it back down. So you just cover up the answer to the question. Okay. And when you get to the end, slide 12, you are done with reading for today.
Go all the way to the end, please.
All right. Thank you. We'll see you hopefully at 11.